Hello Reds, welcome along to All for United.
Don't talk to us about the Champions League this evening. Don't talk to us about the Champions League this evening. Evening, everyone. Welcome along to All for United, the home to Manchester United content with pure Manchester United fans. We've got a lot of Manchester United fans ready to go tonight, including John, Jamie, Stu, Callum, and so happy that Azils has joined us as well. This guy's massively talented. He's on the show tonight as well. We're going to get a view of all the Reds ahead of the game against Roma on Thursday in just a mo. But first of all, guys, if you don't mind, I want to bring in a reporter who covers mainly Roma. John Solano's offered to join us this evening. So, John, I'm going to put you on the big screen there. Hello, mate. Thank you for jumping in. The reason why I wanted to get you on quickly, mate, to ask you about Roma at the start of the show today is because it's been a crazy 24 hours in Italy, hasn't it? I can tell you 100 reasons why Jose Mourinho shouldn't be the manager of Roma, but tell us what the reception's been like from Roma fans and how is everything over there?
Well, first off, I blame you guys for this. This was the reception he has gotten, of course, has been, for the most part, extremely positive. As bad as it sounds, Roma supporters really needed a distraction because the second leg and the remainder of the season, for that matter, it really does seem like somewhat of a death march, so to speak. But the reception he's gotten has been overwhelmingly positive. Coming on here, though, I have a feeling perhaps you guys could offer everybody probably a bit word of warning, because the Mourinho that we tend to hold on to and think of in the Serie A, at least in Italy, is the one from Inter. And obviously, what are we going on? A decade more of that. So, having seen how things went in his last two stops, I assume, as far as expectations, I feel this stop here, you guys can probably give me other words of warning, because I haven't heard one negative thing today. In fact, the reception has been shockingly, overwhelmingly, resoundingly positive. There really isn't anybody saying boo about this. I mean, everybody. This has been welcomed so strongly. Now, in fairness, it's not as if Roma have had a lot of managers to the winning pedigree that Mourinho has had. We could probably count them on one hand, the first one being Fabio Capello. Beyond him, it's a very small list. So I can understand maybe the other Roma supporters not being dismissive of how things went in his last two stops, but I guess at least willing to somewhat overlook it, because this is just a manager who brings something that, frankly, they haven't had in some time, very long time.
At the very least, John, it puts Roma back on the map, doesn't it, really, in terms of a European giant having a manager like Jose Mourinho, even if he has lost it a little bit, to be fair. But to be fair to Mourinho as well, the one place where I think he will always have his reputation is in Italy, because of what he done with Milan, that incredible season. You know, there was always reports that he'd always be welcome back at Inter Milan. But very interesting now that Inter Milan at the top of the pile again in Serie A, and he's heading off to Roma. What job has he got there, John? I mean, we saw a glimpse of Roma, obviously, against us in a game, but what's that job going to be like for him?
Well, I think you all the first leg. Beyond that, I don't know much more I could add. For Chris Smalling and Mkhitaryan, I can only imagine the PTSD maybe they have. I mean, I think he has a lot of work ahead of him. Now, in fairness, Paulo Fonseca has dealt with a very difficult hand. He arrived in the middle of obviously a just a few months before a pandemic, but the previous ownership group, they were in talks to sell the club. Literally, those talks began a month and a half after he began his role, and they lasted up until the previous August when Roma was sold to the Friedkin Group. I do think that he has a very big task ahead of him. They're going to need a lot of changes in the market. Roma, I mean, they're always known as a fairly active club on the market. Just ask Liverpool; they'll be the first to attest to that. For Mourinho's football, I don't necessarily know how many of the guys currently will fit the bill, so to speak, in this current Roma. I do think that there's going to be the need for some reinforcements, particularly in the midfield. Striker as well. Dzeko, last legs, earning a lot. The wage bill is a mess. It just takes a simple Google search. It really is depressing. Dzeko, Javier Pastore, people even forgot who that guy was. I don't even know who he is anymore, if he even plays football. He has a lot of work. It is interesting because Roma have had some financial problems over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And this is so curious simply from the aspect of it's difficult for me to envision that Jose Mourinho arrives at Roma without pretty heavy and important guarantees in the market.
Yeah, I said that today, John, as well. Someone said, would he be given a budget? He needs to be. If Mourinho's taken over as your manager, he has to be given the money or given the players that he wants. One more question, John, because I know that you've got a dash. You've got an evening full of interviews because of everything that's going on today around Roma. I'm also going to bring the guys in to chat and preview the game from a Man United point of view in a second. But from a Roma point of view, what are you playing for? Are the players now going to start playing to try and impress Jose for next season? What's the mentality going into this game? What are the whispers like there? Could they make changes even? Let some fringe players play? What's the feeling in Rome?
Oh, that's a great question. The motivation within the team over the past month and a half, it's been pretty low. That's been very evident in the output on the pitch as well. The results, Europa League, beyond what they did against Ajax, which you can make the case Ajax deserved to progress ahead of them. Now, Roma did pretty well in the first leg. The second leg, I thought Ajax was better. But I think the only motivation I think they will have is not to embarrass themselves, which it's Roma. You really don't know what you're going to get. It really is astonishing. In the middle of that match last week, just because we felt it so many times, like, when they get into this, like this meltdown mode, right? Almost, you can feel it. They just start leaking goals. The heads drop. They lose the attitude. They lose the professionalism. They don't run. I really just think what we see this week is merely going to be sort of trying to limit the damage, so to speak. It's probably the best way I can describe it. It's already 6-2 on aggregate. Paulo Fonseca, they announced today, he'll be leaving. This just seems very awkward if I'm being quite honest. You have a lame duck manager. You have players who, with Mourinho arriving, they know they're done for. So beyond merely displaying some professionalism, I'm hard pressed to think of what the actual motivation is, to be quite honest with you. And that's going to be the case for this next month. And that includes matches against Inter, Lazio. It's not as if they're playing teams that are already doomed mathematically for the drop to Serie B. So they have some difficult matches upcoming. And unfortunately, I just think what we see is merely going to be let's not make this an embarrassment sort of result. Beyond that, I don't really expect a whole lot, if I'm being quite honest.
It's going to be interesting. Wayne said it last week. The confidence in this Roma side. it's tough. You never know what Roma team's going to come out and play. And I think we saw actually a mirror image, Stu. I think you was on that last week of exactly what Wayne was describing to us within this Roma team. I actually thought once they're 2-1 up, once they got a couple of goals at Old Trafford, there's some confidence, lads. If you can't get confidence off of that, I don't know what you can get confidence off of in a semi-final tie at Old Trafford. But it just collapsed for them. And God, I don't know. What's your prediction, then, John? What's going to happen?
Oh, come on! Oh, my word!
That's the hardest question you're going to be asked tonight, John.
Yeah, it probably will be. 2-1.
You can't just say numbers. It's not the lottery, John.
Well, as you said, it is Roma. First leg against Liverpool, Barcelona. I mean, you probably are better off playing a lottery instead of predicting anything with this team. And I somewhat kid, but there's also a lot of truth into it. It's play the lottery instead. I think that really is the only advice, the only decent advice I can give in all of this is you're better off going down that path.
John, you've been fantastic. Thank you for spending 10 minutes coming and chatting to us, mate. Really appreciate it. Let's do something towards the summer window and stuff and chat a bit more in the summer. Really appreciate you taking time out, John. Thank you, mate. Cheers for that. Really appreciate you coming on.
Bye, guys.
John Solano there, who writes for Roma Press. Lovely bloke, and hopefully we'll do some more with him in the future. As he comes out, let's bring Salim from Stretford Post as well. Here's our Reds previewing the game on Thursday. Jamie, you're the first person next to me. We just heard there from John about the state of Roma. We saw them last week at Old Trafford. Is it tie over?
See, I don't want to say yet, and then it comes back to bite me on Twitter if they manage to pull it back. But you imagine so, like you know, like we were just talking there, that they're a side that's really short on confidence. They're going to go into this tie thinking about the futures, what lie ahead of them. We mentioned Mkhitaryan, Smalling, players like that probably don't seem to have a future under Jose. I mean, Smalling might. So I think it's time, bring in some rotation. I think the squad that we pick is going to tell a lot about Ollie's plans. It's going to be interesting to see whether Donny starts, whether Ahmad starts. But you imagine that it's got to be tie over and people can start looking towards the final. But you never know, do you? Who knows? They might turn up and batter us 5-0. Let's hope they don't.
They're words I don't want to hear. Stu, let me go over to you. Jamie makes a good point. It's always difficult to say tie over. It's always difficult to try and judge these things because, again, bit of confidence. But I just hit on what I said there with John. I just feel like if you can't get confidence being 2-1 up at Old Trafford, I don't know where you're going to find that confidence as a team, as a squad.
Yeah, I kind of with Jamie, really. I tend to think it is tie over, really. I think it'll be the first half will determine whether Ollie backs off and brings on Ahmad, brings on Mejbri maybe, brings on a couple of the kids to play the second half. I would suggest if we don't concede in the first half, we go 1-0 up, that would probably be what he'll do. I'd also suggest that he'll probably bring in Twazabi if he's fit and Baye if he's fit. Probably Tellez will come in at left back. I'm pretty sure Donny will get the nod. Because to be fair, if you're not going to start Donny away at Roma when you're 6-2 up, if you were Donny, I don't know what you'd be thinking. Probably Matic. I would say James will get the nod. So I'd imagine you'll see quite a few changes. I know we've had a week off for whatever reasons. But yeah, I would imagine Roma probably will rest players as well. I can't really see Roma thinking they can turn it around. I think it'll be a low-scoring game. I think John was right, but I think we'll probably win 2-1, maybe 2-0. But I don't expect anything other than a pedestrian game of football. So I'm kind of hoping that if we don't concede or we don't look like we're any kind of trouble in the first half, he plays Ahmed and brings on Mejbri, and gives the lads a good chance. See what European football's about.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, Stu. It's a good point well made, actually. All I will go back to, though, and Callum, maybe I'll come over to you with this, even if we as fans maybe think, in our heart of hearts that the tie is done. The last time we felt this way was after winning 4-0 at Real Sociedad. We went into the second leg of that game and he didn't really make any changes at all, did he, Ollie? So what are you expecting on Thursday, Callum?
Do you know what? We've been on this show so many times before and we've sort of said, we'll rest players, he'll give the fringe players a chance. And he's not once. He's always played his strongest 11, so I don't really think I think we'll probably see his first 11 for the first 45 minutes. If it's still 0-0, then he'll probably start bringing on the likes of Donny and Ahmad. And the thing is with Ahmad, we keep getting carried away with him. When he was at Atlanta, I think he played 45 minutes of football. Yeah. He's played more minutes at Man United than he did at Atlanta. So the way we manage him is obviously really vital as well. I think, to be honest with you, he probably will just start his strongest 11. Because don't forget, we didn't play on Sunday, as we all wonder why. But you know, we've had a full week rest, so I think we'll just play our strongest 11 just to keep them fit. You know, 10 days without football when it comes to the weekend in the Premier League is actually quite a big gap. So I think he'll start the likes of Pogba and Fernandes and Maguire, and he'll probably give De Gea the nod in that. Obviously, he seems to be the Europa League goalkeeper now, but other than that, strongest 11, keep the fitness up, and then just, you know, straight roll into the final, I think.
A straight roll into the final. Hey, it's that simple. It's that simple, Ollie. If you're listening, it's that simple. Azils, let me come over to you, bro. What do you make of all this so far? We've heard John there speaking about Roma being shot of confidence. We obviously stuffed them at Old Trafford with that second half display. Look, as we said historically, Ollie doesn't make changes. So what would you do going into Thursday? Because isn't it important that we stay competitive as a side, more or less nailed on top 4 in the Premier League, so not a lot to play for there. Europa League second leg semi-final, more or less done, not a lot to play for. So do you want to see a competitive performance still from United?
I mean, I'd like to be honest with you, I don't mind what team goes out. I think any team that we set out strong enough to just finish this whole sort of speculation that they can come back off anyway. So for me, if we do play our strongest 11, I wouldn't mind. I think Ollie just plays them consistently because he just wants to provide evidence to the fans that he has that team and he's going to use it. And obviously we have the summer transfer window coming up soon, so I'd like to see what additions we can add to that. And yeah, man, I'd like to see Ahmed play. I know a lot of the fan base. He's already a fan favourite, and I'm sure a lot of people want to see him play. But for me, if he doesn't, I won't be too bothered. But I just want to get this job done and win the trophy.
Yeah, man, and that's ultimately the end game, isn't it? Ultimately, the end game is that we get through this game and we get into the final, we cement our place, and then we go and do the business in front of some fans in Poland. I think that's so needed, so needed. There's a ballot happening for that as well, isn't there? So we're actually going to get some lads potentially travelling over to that game too, which would be a good.
Yeah, I've had my email about that, but it looks like it's going back a couple of years. You've got to gone to 3 away games, and I think we've only got 2,000 tickets. So it'll be really tight, tight.
We've mentioned the lottery once on this show. We might as well mention it again with that one.
Yeah, it's a definite lottery.
John, let me come over to you. I want to hit on a similar question for you. Is it tie done? And how do you expect us to approach the game then on Thursday?
I think for me, the key in a way regarding the lineup and whether it's done or not is actually the gap now to City in the league is just, I mean, listen, I think we're all dreaming a little bit, but I was dreaming a bit when Villa took the lead about 10 days ago against City and got close to half time, I think, in that game. And then you're thinking, you're doing the maths in your head and you're thinking, we win our game in hand, 5 points, etc. But the day that we drew at Leeds, that was any dreams of winning the league were done that day, in my opinion. So with that in mind, this actually is the game that this is the tournament really that we arguably should be resting players for in a way, given that the Champions League should be secure in the league. I would probably go with something a bit like one of the guys said earlier, pretty much the strongest team for the first half. And we fairly within one player or so, we all pretty much agree, I guess, on that. The only player I would rest, actually, I'd have him on the bench, but would rest him certainly from the starting lineup, would be Paul Pogba. If I've got my calculations right, all yellow cards were rescinded prior to the semi-finals. So everyone gets or not rescinded, the clean slate. And therefore, only the players that picked up a booking in the first leg could potentially get suspended for the final. And that means Paul Pogba. So he would be the only player from what would be my strongest 11, I think, that I would rest. I would have Ahmad Diallo, and I would also have Donny as well, very much ready to play the second half. Should we get to half-time level in any way, shape or form, I would start thinking about bringing players on, such as those two. Probably Donny would be a straight stop sort for Bruno, and maybe Diallo would come on for Rashford or James, I think, who possibly would start on James or Greenwood could start, I guess, on Thursday. All sorts of permutations there. But yeah, so pretty much the strongest lineup. 6-2. does seem like it's done. But we have seen them overturned. It is possible. And what would be insane is if we were overturned, we rested players. We haven't played in a week. I think that's also important too. So we've not played for a week. There's no reason really in terms of recent tiredness that should come into it. We've seen good performances from players like Bruno, who we were concerned about. So I think it's just Pogba for me that drops out, and the starting 11 has to be the strongest one apart from that.
One other dying question I've got for you, John. Why an Anderson shirt?
To be honest with you, the shirt is one of my favorites just in terms of style in the last 10 or 15 years. For those of you that are not sure which shirt it is, it's the one that for me just brings back memories of the 3-1 win at Arsenal in the semi-final in 2009. I like that shirt. But secondly, why Anderson, which is a bit more to your point, was there were a few names I could have got. And I just felt as though at the time he was building a bit of a legendary status, even if it was just over an 18-month period at the time that this shirt came out. But the performance at Anfield in the season that we won the Champions League and also the Premier League in 2008 and a few other things. And even now, we debate about certain players and their legendary status. And there was one or two flying around today. I know I noticed with Peter Schmeichel and one or two others. But I would far rather go around with a shirt of Anderson's on the back than many other players that have come and gone, put it that way.
Yeah, that's a good point, well, mate. By the way, anyone else wondering why Jamie's just moved? He just had a moan backstage that no one could see his face. So I've just moved him down the running order so people can actually see his face now. So there he is.
I didn't have a moan.
Sal, thank you for jumping on, pal. Always good to see your face, mate. Look, it's even though you can't see mine, some would say that's a good thing. Face for radio. Even though we're going into a bit of what some may say is a dead rubber game on Thursday, how do you think Ollie's going to set up the lads? How do you think he's going to put them out there? Look, we haven't played. They missed a game on Sunday. They would have been ready to play. Surely the lads are itching to play this match, no matter if the tie is done.
I mean, I echo what everyone else has been saying. I think we have to start with our strongest lineup because let's not forget, Roma are known for overtaking leads, especially a few years ago against Barcelona. We all remember they were losing to Barcelona 3-0, and they came back and won the game. I think we have to be very careful what we do. Roma will be very up for the game. I think if it is 0-0 at halftime, I agree we should make some changes. Probably bring on Telles and Bayer. We'd like to see them get some minutes, get some match fitness. Donny van der Beek for me, he's the only one I would start. I'm passionate Donny fan, and I hope he starts on tomorrow. So let's fingers crossed we get the result we need and we go into a final. Because if we don't, I can't see Ole coming back from that. To be honest with you, if we lose this tie, it's all over really. But we can't be complacent. We have to show them some respect because they have done it before.
It's the psychological edge for me. It's the whole semi-final thing. I love Ollie, and I'm never going to scream Ollie out ever. But for me, you don't get it easier than this to get to a final. I think, literally, you've done the hard work in the first game, in the first leg. Now you've got to see it through. And I completely agree with what you said there, Sal. You make sure of it. So what you do is you put out your strongest team, you attack the game, and then if you get the opportunity to make some changes, change things around in the second half, once the tie is done, once you're 1-0 up or, you're 0-0 into the 60th minute, do it then. Make certain. Don't leave anything to, so to speak, chance, because, that could ruin what would end up being a good season for us, really, if we can go second and win the Europa League. Stu, we've heard some names be mentioned, Ahmad, Van der Beek, etc. I know you love chatting about Donny van der Beek. I think ultimately what we want to see here is we want to see Van der Beek come in, but given a chance to perform, don't we? We don't want to just see Van der Beek brought in to play in a midfield with Matic and Fred. He's never going to get the ball. We want to see him play with some quality around him, don't we?
Yeah, I said it last week before the game that I felt that Donny should play, and everybody's well aware of my preference of where Donny fits into our starting 11 with Pogba and Bruno. I know Bruno's not going to want to be rested tomorrow, but I would rest Bruno and I would give Donny a chance. Donny, as a player, when he receives the ball, he's brilliant in tight spaces. He takes one or two steps, leaves his player standing, and he can receive the ball. He's very intelligent with his running. He's almost I think, and we've not really seen it yet, and we will do next season, I hope, is almost very, very similar to the way that Cavani reads the game. There's nobody better in the Premier League at the moment than Cavani in the 6-yard box. You've heard me mention this. He's 2 or 3 seconds ahead of anybody else. His movement, his perception. And Donny's very, very similar, but he does it in a more slow pace. And when he does get the ball, he can either turn. He's got a bit of strength. He's quite tall, Donny. You don't necessarily see it on the pitch, but he's quite tall. He's got a bit of aggression in him. Saw a couple of matches last season with Ajax, and he's quite willing to put his foot in. He's quite willing to take a yellow card. I don't know, like everybody else, or understand Ollie's treatment of Donny. There's been various things said that potentially this is always going to be what we're going to do with Donny to bring him into, the way that the Premiership plays. But to me, he's just too good a player to be on our bench week in and week out. And without going into the McFred debate again, I cannot for the life of me understand why Donny can't get a position in our team over, McFred and Matic. So tomorrow, I'd love to see him start. I'd love to see him get the kind of number 10 role, the Bruno role, and really make a good account of himself. And I go back to I think Roma will probably have a go, like everybody says in the first half. But Donny's should have a chance of starting. So for me, he's my type of footballer. I just like him. He's very eloquent on the ball, and he's very economical with it. So he's my type of player. So Sal, I'm with you, pal. Donny all the way, mate.
Yes, mate.
Yeah, 100%. Do you know what I found quite interesting? I was online earlier on, just scrolling through Twitter, and someone put together a compilation of Donny's tackles. And the boy can tackle, to be fair to him. He's got Wan-Bissaka legs on him, honestly. He was getting slide tackles in. He looked decent with, in terms of winning the ball back. But again, Callum, on Donny van der Beek, it's all right making changes and bringing him in when we make changes, but we're not going to get the best out of him unless quality's around him. So, we don't want to shoehorn players in, do we? We still want to make sure. So resting Bruno, bring in Donny, but still give him an opportunity. If you can play Rashford, play Rashford. Cavani, I'd love to see Donny and Cavani play properly up top together.
Well, just to make the point on not Cavani, on Donny van der Beek, the problem with him is he's sort of been bought without the right players around him. So you look at McTominay, Fred obviously playing a lot. We haven't got an out-and-out defensive midfielder like the likes of Ndidi, and the problem is we're using McFred as one position. We have to put them both in there to do one job, and it's a problem because we don't have that guy. Like Matic 5 years ago would have been perfect for it. Unfortunately, his legs have gone now. I think if you were to sign somebody in the summer like an Ndidi, in my opinion, I don't think our defences are that bad. I just don't think the protection in front of it is there. I think if you were to sign somebody like an Ndidi or a Bazuma or someone like that from Brighton, the defence would improve massively, and you'd see the likes of Donny getting a lot more game time. When he has played, especially recently, he's probably looked a little bit more shot for confidence than he did at the start of the season. But I think if we give him a chance, I personally think next season will be Donny's season. It has baffled me why he's not played certain games this season, but there's obviously a reason. There's some sort of plan. Don't know why, but so I'm not particularly too worried. From what I've heard in the background, Donny's very happy at United. He's come out and said it. I believe the women's footballers have spoke to him and said the same thing. So I think there's more chance of him getting a good amount of minutes on Thursday. Whether he'll start on Thursday, I don't know. I think that one's still up in the air. I think in a minute. I still think he'll start Bruno and go all out especially for the first half. Anyway.
Do you think that'd tell a story in itself if Bruno does play, Callum, or again, do you think it's just about being sure that we are going through?
I think it's probably a mixture of two things: being sure and giving the lads minutes. Like this team has been used to playing 2 games a week. I think every week this season, bar maybe 1 or 2. So I know it doesn't seem like much, but I reckon that the fitness of the lads could possibly suffer. So I think they'll probably give the likes of Pogba and Bruno a good 60 minutes, and then you'll see the likes of Donny, maybe Ahmad, Swansea, with them kind of players. So I don't think it's a story in itself. I think it's just a case of being absolutely sure. Saw a comment before as well saying we're too worried. I don't think any one of us have said that we think we're not going to get through. I just think it's just a case of going all out, because Ollie's had the opportunity to rest players already throughout this competition when we've been 4-0 up, and he hasn't. So I can't see him doing anything different on Thursday night.
Yeah, good points, well made. Adzils, one person who I want to bring up is Edison Cavani, our player of the month. And if you want to read a little bit more into the team that was meant to face Liverpool, Cavani was actually dropped out of that team, rested. So potentially he was always looking to play Cavani on Thursday. Look, he was sensational in that first leg, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic, fantastic. Top class performance. Did his job. I can't believe. You know what I'll say? At the start, when we actually brought him in to Manchester United, I think the way he was brought in was poor. I do think that the outcome that we have had with him actually being in our team has been superb. A lot of people doubted him, but that's just football fans for you. But I honestly believe Cavani's still one of the best around, and at his age, and if he's still doing that, which he is, bro, some certain clubs should be embarrassed that they've been gassing up people like Timo Werner and all these other joke men, because we have Edison Cavani, and I'm proud to say that we have it, man. But I want to talk about the midfielder. For me, McFred is, for me on the eye test is poor. I dislike it. Even though the stats say they do a pretty good job. I'm not a stat guy at all. I'm an eye test person. For me, Fred had a great start to the season up until late February, and then obviously the Brighton game, he was brilliant. McTominay, I don't think he's had a stand-up performance other than the Leeds game, and that kind of faded away in the later stages of the game. So for me, I see a decently big skill gap between those two players. I just think for the midfield to work, you need a DM like an Ndidi. Not a Rice. I don't really rate Rice that highly. I think Ndidi is the perfect fit for Manchester United. I think he's honestly a top quality DM. He's tenacious. He has legs to go in for slides, and he does it with ease. And I've watched him in the eye test. He's brilliant. And I think you need someone who's better than Fred as a DM. And you need someone who is either just below Pogba's level or on Pogba's level. And I think Ndidi is that guy. And I think if we do bring Ndidi in, or someone like an Ndidi, you can definitely utilize you can obviously mix around with the players that we have. Obviously, you have Donny, Fred, Pogba, and then obviously that DM to all mix around and play with. And obviously, Pogba's doing DC on the wing. So, man, I'm excited for the future with midfield.
Yeah, it's definitely about buying the best in class now, isn't it? We can't just go and just start filling holes again and just buying players for stats' sake. We've definitely got to look at the best in class in their position and go out and get them. And people can say that the economy's, and it is obviously screwed and there's not a lot of money about at the moment. But ultimately, Adzils, if we want to change this, so to speak, Europa League potential triumph within seasons to come into a Champions League potential triumph, that's an area that needs massively improving, isn't it? The midfield too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And and like I keep saying, I think we get the best out of certain players. So obviously people like your Freds, they need a rest. So I think getting a DM in will definitely improve our defense and how much hate they get. I don't think they deserve the hate. Personally, for me, I think Maguire has just proven this season that he has a potential to be up there with some of the best. And I think for him to be noticed a lot more, we need to get that DM in.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring up Jarvis's comment here, because I do think it's a good comment, well made, in terms of giving Bruno the freedom to create. I would say one thing. I think that was more evident at the start of this season than it was towards the last period. I actually think Bruno has struggled a bit in recent weeks, and that's because for whatever reason, I think the midfield has dropped off a little bit. And I do think that Fred and McTominay, the problem is when they're poor, they're noticeably poor, extremely noticeably poor. When they're good, but they're never standout. They're never exceptional. They never do things that make you go, God, this midfield is good as City's. This midfield is even as good as potentially, Liverpool's and the top clubs out there. And that's why now the natural evolution has got to be to start pushing some of these players out of the team if you want that first team to get better. And ultimately, I think that's what the next couple of summers we're going to see. We're going to see a centre-back, to potentially challenge one of Maguire and Lindelof. We're going to see a midfielder to challenge McTominay and Fred. It's just a natural evolution. You've got to keep refreshing the teams. We can't just stick with it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. But that's a transfer chat for another day. Jamie, on McFred and Matic and Van der Beek and Bruno and Pogba, is it potentially, I thought in the first leg, potentially we could have done with a Matic in there. I thought actually that first half, I think Matic would have actually stirred things up a little bit more. Do you think that he should start? on Thursday, Jamie?
Yeah, I think obviously when we talk about confidence that we're going into the game, can maybe experiment a little more and bring in some of the fringe players. And I think that's what Matic is these days. I think Cam summed it up the best I've heard it when he says that McFred does a one-man job between two players, so it leaves us short in the pitch. And we talk about midfields that we're not better than, but even when we look at like Leicester, like we don't have a better midfielder than Leicester realistically. Like I would rather have Ndidi, Tielemans, and Maddison than play McFred. I mean, obviously not Bruno, because Bruno's obviously one of a kind, but you know what I mean? So I probably would bring Matic in. I think he screens the back four a little bit better than Fred does, and he probably has the same sort of passing distribution that McTominay does, so he does the same sort of level job that they do. I do think Donny needs to start, because Callum again saying before, and I promise I'm not being a Callum fanboy and just recycling his comments here, but next season is going to be Donny's season, but if we're not careful, it'll be elsewhere. Donny stinks of the sort of player at the minute that will go out on loan because he falls out of favour and absolutely smash it and never want to come back because somebody else will show some faith in him. And when when you watched him at Ajax, he seemed to operate in that sort of 6, 8, and 10 position, all of them quite fluidly, and he was quite competent at every area. I look at Fred, I look at McTominay. I don't get me wrong, I do rate McTominay. With Fred, and I said this before on the show, and I got a few comments on Twitter about it, but I don't know where Fred's best position is. He doesn't have the defensive sort of nous to operate as an out-and-out 6. He doesn't have that sort of passing range to be an 8. So I don't know, but yeah, I'd give Matic a run out. I'd start Donny, and we just need to do. The only thing I would definitely do is Marcus Rashford needs some time off. Like the guy needs to go and pack his bags, get on a cruise for a couple of weeks, rest his legs, and come back for the last part of the season. Especially, if we're looking to get to the final, if we're looking to have a strong win at the end of the season, we didn't fully fit. And
I was going to say quickly, Jamie, just on Fred there, what you were saying. For me, whenever I watch Fred, all I can think is that he looks at McTominay and goes, I'm just going to copy exactly what McTominay's doing because I can't do wrong. Like, that's literally what he does every game. They don't complement each other. That's my problem. If one goes forward, the other goes as well. If one goes back, the other goes as well. One doesn't do the other's weakness for them. And I think that's what's frustrating watching them. There's no partnership.
Definitely.
Can I just quickly add about Fred? He would be a much better player, Jamie, if he got hold of the ball and dropped it 2 yards, and that's it. That's all he's got to do.
Stu, he would be a much better player if he could get hold of the ball and pass it.
Well, there is that, yeah. But like a good CDM, that's all he does. That's all he does. He'll get a tackle in, he'll get it, and he'll give it, and that's it. And that's where you marshal the back four. And
do you know what, Stu? That's absolutely spot on. Like the perfect example of that is Busquets. He literally didn't score, he didn't assist, but he was that intelligent of a player that nobody ever got near him. And the other problem, and if we're going to say Fred could be a better player, as long as he doesn't frigging shoot, he'll be a better player. Because I'm sick to death of him. It seems to fly into the top row or to the corner flag whenever he shoots. He's not a good shooter with the ball. I think he scored 3 goals for United, and they've all been pretty crazy ones.
I want to know what the myth is about Fred's passing. What is the myth about his passing? Am I reading this wrong? What is it like? He's a good passer of the ball.
That he can pass a ball. I've honestly never seen that man actually make a 6-yard pass like successfully. Do you know what I mean? Like when it comes to recycling possession, like don't get me wrong. I've watched games where Fred has won the ball back really, really well, and I said this exact same thing the other week. He'll win the ball back really well, and then 5 seconds will give the ball away with a wavy pass, and he has to do it again. Yeah, exactly. We saw it in the PSG game where he ended up getting sent off. The reason he got sent off is because he was constantly chasing after his own mistakes, and that's what he does. Like he's not clinical enough to be a 6. Wan-Bissaka, right? Sorry, I know I'm taking over with family, but you watch somebody run down that wing, and 9 times out of 10, I have no dramas because Wan-Bissaka will make that tackle, and you know that he's getting the ball because he's just ridiculously good at it. Whereas with Fred, I'm 50-50 that he's either going to break somebody's leg or he's going to take the ball back. But then straight away, you're like, well, is he going to make the pass? So I think, if we had somebody sat next to him and that's why I think, Fred does look better in a pivot with maybe Pogba, or McTominay looks better in a pivot with Pogba, because they have that person that they can pick the ball up, they can pass it 5-6 yards, whatever, and then Pogba's got the license then to spray those passes.
But McTominay looks awful with anyone. McTominay looks awful with anyone.
You're right. Yeah, you're
sorry.
Right. A good DM though, you don't need a pivot. A good DM can hold that position by
Yeah.
himself. You don't need a pivot.
Well, he controls that third. He controls that quarter of the
Absolutely.
pitch, doesn't he? Really, between the defensive line and the more attacking players to help you then progress play, and then free up Pogba to take more of a midfield free role, and then Bruno Fernandes as well, which ultimately will then turn into like a, so to speak, 3 in midfield instead of a 2-3-1, and ultimately, and I want to get on to Cavani in a minute with you, John, by the way, but Skeptic. I watched our last game, and the reason why we lost the first half was because our midfield 2 were absolutely dominated and couldn't get hold of the game. If you're talking about the Roma game, the first leg of the Roma game, that first half, they were awful, absolutely awful. So I thought, well, I was messaging my mate going, I can't believe that that literally the 2 of them still play week in, week out. They were not good. And this is the thing that frustrates me with Fred. He's the epitome of second half FC. Honestly, once he gets a bollocking, he turns up. I think it was the second half of the game against who was it against? Well, against Roma, he was good in the second half.
Against Milan.
But against Milan,
Tottenham.
second half brilliant. Second half against Tottenham, brilliant.
I think for me with Fred, I think last season I've even obviously because I obviously with Jem, who's a Chelsea fan, I work with him very closely. You know, the whole Chelsea parade. They all came to me saying that Fred had a great season last season. I think he had a good season last season. Definitely better than his. Obviously, the one before that was atrocious. Obviously, when he first came to Manchester. But for me, great start to this one up until late February. I think after around that area it was just atrocious. It was actually atrocious. It was like 5-6 games. It was horrendously bad. And then the Brighton game was solid, and I think that's definitely one of the most underrated performances he's had this season. That Brighton performance, he did really well. But then someone posted on Twitter, the Leeds game that we drew 0-0 this season. There's a clip of Fred just so exposed by himself in that midfield at times, and this is why people will have a dig at Fred, or they'll have a dig at McTominay. It's never both of them together getting blamed, because it's either McTominay's either too up the pitch or Fred's too exposed, or it's this and that. For me, that midfield needs to go. Just make them the players that they're brought in to be, and that's just themselves, not just them two together. For me, that pivot needs to go now. It was good for a while, and then it just shut out. It's an inconsistent partnership. I think it's limiting both of them. I think I watched Fred at Shakhtar since I was a young kid. My dad was a Shakhtar fan. And I thought as soon as Fred came in, he wasn't going to fit our system at all. But he is a good part of our team. I just think he's better when he's rotated and gets a rest. I think that's just what it is.
Yeah, or has that job that he needs to do week in, week out, where potentially with a holding midfielder, he'd be a better player as well, as would Scott, as would many of our players. Azils, I know you've got to rush quickly, but so just really, really quickly, what's your prediction for Thursday?
I'm going to say we're going to just net back 2 goals, really.
Done. Just done and dusted. Cheers, mate. Thank you for jumping on. I'm going to get through some of the other guys. Thank you, man. Really appreciate you jumping in. John, I said I was going to come over to you next, so let me come over to you next quickly. Cavani, talk to me. Player of the month?
Month, I don't know, but certainly that performance in the second half. Sorry, no, both halves against Roma. I think he was very good. I think did he have a goal disallowed in the first half? I'm not sure, but he was excellent throughout that match, and I'm pretty pleased that it looks like he's going to be staying. I heard Ollie saying that he's looking forward to him playing in front of a crowd, which I think will help. There was a few stories about him, feeling a bit homesick, but it seems like he's settled on staying for another year. I would probably start him tomorrow night. As I said, I would start the strongest 11. I think that the thing was he wasn't going to play on Sunday against Liverpool. I think 2 games in a week is something to be considered. And I don't know if I've seen him play back-to-back over a 4-day period at all since he came into the club. So there's quite a long time since he arrived now. So I do think that was the reason. So the fact that he wasn't penciled in for Sunday, as you mentioned earlier, I think means that he will start tomorrow, and I think it'll be the right thing. If he can get us the goal that basically sees us over the line at some point during that first half, that would be excellent. But I'm super happy with his contribution. I think he actually does get the club a little bit. His tweets are amusing. He engages a little bit, if you like. So, I have no complaints. My only concern is that him staying, I mean, maybe again it was a pipe dream, but any possibilities of getting Haaland, I guess, probably won't happen. I can't imagine us having Haaland and Cavani and Greenwood and Rashford and Martial, to be honest with you. So I think Cavani staying is probably an indication that we're probably going to spend money elsewhere on a central defensive midfielder, as was highlighted earlier. I think that would be the right decision.
Yeah, potentially. So let me come over to you, pal. With Cavani in this side, what difference does that make to this Manchester United team with a player like Edison Cavani? Like that was it his first goal where Bruno flicked it through, and it's the first time inside the foot, top corner. You just never thought he was going to miss that, did you?
It's world class, isn't it? He's the only world class forward I think we got at our club at the moment. For 20 years, he's been a fabulous player, fantastic player. I mean, my only worry is his age, and I don't want us to be offering him a new contract and not get anyone else in return. Like, I feel like it would be a cheap option, but it's not the end of the world if he signs. We have got more important positions to think about, the right wing, for example. But I feel he's a world-class player in our team, and you can tell straight away he's a world-class player. Just like with Ibrahimovic and Henrik Larsson a few years ago, you can tell that they've got that certain something, that experience of scoring goals at the top level that we need. And I feel like he has helped Greenwood a lot. Greenwood, his positioning has changed. He's scoring different types of goals. I see him in the training, in training, talking to each other. I think Cavani's been a good purchase, but I won't keep him anywhere beyond this season, unfortunately. I just feel like it's going to be £300,000 a week wasted when we can just invest that in someone else, in my opinion.
Who would you invest it in?
I mean, I'm Haaland all the way. I admire Haaland. I think he's got the potential to be one of probably the best striker in the world if he isn't already. I like Haaland a lot. His physique, he reminds me of Cristiano Ronaldo's physique. He looks after himself. I mean, if he was at United with Sancho, imagine that. Because let's not forget Sancho. When Sancho doesn't play, Haaland doesn't play. And the stats prove that. And if we sign both of them, I mean, we deserve it. If the Glazers are going to have any sort of future at United, they really got to start, pleasing us now. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to accept anything other than a fabulous summer window. And if we don't, it's just going to get worse for them. Even though I think it's the end of the road for them anyway.
Right, especially if City go and do the unthinkable before the summer even happens.
Oh, don't. It's a terrible day for football. It's a terrible day.
People didn't get what I put out on Twitter the other day. I put out on Twitter the other day saying, before the weekend, I put out saying basically this weekend could be, or last weekend could have been an awful weekend because City could have won the title and we could have lost to Liverpool. That is horrendous. That's enough to make any Man United fan cry. And people are like, yeah, well, City have wrapped the league up anyway. It's like, it doesn't make it any frigging easier. Like, it doesn't make it so, yeah, we've lost to Liverpool, City have won the league. It's fine. It's Liverpool. They're 7th and City are 8 points ahead of us anyway. It doesn't make it easier. It's like, I
just feel like football is, I mean, I thought that's the only thing we can grasp onto was the Champions League. And now it looks like they're going to do it. And it's sad in one way, in many ways, that football has gone this way. When money wins at the end.
Of course. Let's have a look at how Man United are going to win. I'm going to just try and put a hypothetical team together. So feel free to pitch in if you disagree with a player that I say, and then you can state why you're going with someone else. Is that cool, lads? Are you good with that? Let's do that. Right, so we're all going De Gea in goal. He looks like he's the cup keeper now. So I'm just thinking in Ollie's head, De Gea done. Right back, again, I'm thinking he'll go strong. I don't think he'll rest Wan-Bissaka. He doesn't rest Wan-Bissaka. As much as we might preach for Williams to play and rest Wan-Bissaka, he's not going to, is he? So Wan-Bissaka right back. Yeah, all good. Yeah. He's not going to stray away from Lindelof and Maguire, is he? Is anyone going to give me a reason why he might do?
No. I don't know. I think he might bring in Bailly, a new contract. I think he might bring him in. I would rest Maguire. Hasn't he played every Premier League game this season? Or for 2 years, hasn't he, with us? So I'd rest Maguire.
Is a Maguire on the cusp of becoming like the first ever United player to play 79 consecutive fixtures or something like that? So I don't think he'll want to risk
two Premier League. Premier League seasons since Gary Pallister.
Yeah, to me, I do agree with that, and I like it, but I don't care about stuff like that. If I was his gaffer, you rest it.
But he's not going to. But still, he's not going to rest the captain, is he?
No, he won't. He won't. You're right. He won't. He'll play Lindelof, but I wouldn't. I would bring in Bailly. You signed a 4-year contract. Let's use him. He's fresh. He's fit. I would bring him in, and I think Bailly and Lindelof would be okay.
Maguire. What about Bailly Maguire?
Yeah, that would be all right. But I would play Bailly Lindelof. That's what I would do.
Interesting. Get in the live chat, guys. What do you think of that? Left back, obviously, Luke Shaw. Was he going to play Tellez? Could he play Tellez?
He'll play Tellez.
Go on, Callum. Tell me why Tellez.
I think he's just not had a lot of game time recently, and I think Shaw will probably just get rested. Not no particular reason. I just think every time I saw Tellez play for United, I don't think he's been bad at all. He's got a hell of a left foot on him, and his crossing ability and the assists that he can bring to the team are excellent. So I wouldn't be downhearted if we saw Tellez instead of Shaw at all, even in the league with some games. To be honest, I think he's an absolutely brilliant left back, and you can see that with what's happened to Shaw this season.
And it's a good point here from Fred. Obviously, 5 substitutes. So if needs be, if Tellez is in and for whatever reason something's not working, Shaw's always going to be on the bench. He can come on. Williams is always going to be about for Wan-Bissaka as well, potentially at some point. Karthik, do you reckon Axel?
Sorry, Ben. Fred's made. I've got the comments up here, and Fred's made some cracking comments. To be honest, about the transfer window. I know it's for another day, but with the what we should get this summer and then next summer. So I've seen some really good comments from him tonight. I've seen some not so good ones as well from others, but Fred's been really good on the chat tonight.
Wow, everyone's going to be sat at home is using the live chat going, is he talking about me? Is he talking about me? Guys, by the way, whilst you're watching, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as well. I haven't said that yet. If every single one of you watching right now on YouTube can hit that like button, it really helps because it helps us get into other Reds algorithm as they're watching Manchester United videos, which is all good, and they can come and join our ever-growing community. So we've gone really the normal back 4, I think. So what about the midfield 2 then? Does Ollie learn a lesson? Does he bring in Matic, Sal? What do you think?
No. I mean, Matic is the best of 2 evils, really, for me. 3 evils. I would put Fred and Pogba in there. I would have a bit of pace. I'll take out McTominay. I mean, a bit of pace in that team. Roma are going to be coming at us. A little bit of counter-attacking football. We'll just pick them off and just finish the game in the first half. That's what I would do. I know he's going to pick Fred and McTominay, though. I mean, I can't see him changing it. Not now.
John, what are your thoughts on the midfield 2?
I'm going McFred. I do think that they do offer something that Matic doesn't sometimes. I think sometimes maybe not playing has done Matic's reputation a bit more of an enhancement than playing at times. But I have seen him play and look pretty pedestrian. And if we think about, I think it was Wolves really was the last time that I really considered Matic. Wolves at home with one when we won 2-1 in the last minute when I was still dreaming of greater things. From that moment onwards, I thought, no, Matic as a starter for me is done. And I haven't seen anything to change my mind since then. The odd occasion he's come in, he's done a job, but I don't think he offers us as much as McFred do in terms of transition, etc., etc. So I'm going with McFred. I go with De Gea in goal. Back 4, usual, Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, and Maguire. Left back, I'm easy, Shaw or Tellez. So, yeah, that's the sort of back half of the team, if you like, for me. And,
John,
yes,
have you not just accidentally given away the title of your next book, Still Dreaming of Greater Things?
Shit. I can't use that now.
Maybe you could, but it's just I want 10% commission for the idea.
Fair enough.
So I think, Sal, I would like Pogba and Fred personally because it would be good to see Pogba back in that midfield too. And I think, potentially he's not played too badly when he's been played next to Fred. And for some reason, him and McTominay, Pogba and McTominay just never get a shout. There's the Everton game where they started playing really well together. And then all of a sudden, Pogba gets injured, and we've obviously not seen it since. So it's an interesting one, but I think it's going to be McFred, isn't it? It is going to be McFred. It sometimes you feel like it's on his own option.
Ole's very careful, isn't he? He's very careful. He won't change it. And to be honest, I don't blame him because getting to a European final. Winning is a habit, and so is winning trophies. And if we can get to that final, who cares? We got to the final and we win the Europa League. League champions of the world, as the last comment says. So
Carpet,
it'd be you know,
Oh, I
just to
think
get
so.
to the final, it'd be good for Ole, and we can go on from there next season.
Well, moving on then to the right wing, Stu. Tell me who's going to be keeping Jadon Sancho's boots warm?
Yeah, you're going to put Greenwood or James. It'll either be Greenwood or James on either side, left or right.
What do you think?
So I do. Yeah, I can't see him starting Rashford. I think it'd be a mistake if he starts Rashford. I'm with Jamie. I'd pack him off. Give him a couple of weeks off.
Well, what's the point? We're nearly at the end of the season. He's going to play the Euros anyway. I mean, ultimately, he's going to have this operation at the end of the Euros to try and sort him out. But I don't. They're not going to. Managers don't think like that, do they?
But therein lies the problem. What you just said. He's going to play the Euros. So
well, yeah, but ultimately, he's not going to say no to the Euros, is he?
No, and he's been injured for 18 months. He's not been fit for 18 months. I'd rest him, play him Sunday against Villa. That's what I would do.
Interesting. Jamie, what about right
sorry, just let me butt in before Jamie says anything, like I usually do to him. I've just had a quick Google.
Jamie afterwards will probably agree with you. So
yeah,
it
probably will
works.
do. I've just seen, but the Super Cup, if we go and win the Europa League and City do win the Champions League, it's the Super Cup's in Belfast in August. That'd be a right day out, wouldn't it? But anyway, go on, Jamie.
Yeah, but can you not ever come on the channel again, Callum? I love you. You're a great guy. And say if City win the Champions League, just anything City and Champions League is muted.
Yeah, fair enough.
Go on, Jamie. Sorry, what do you think? Are you with Stu? Are we going to see James and Greenwood, or do you expect him to go with Rashford?
I'd like to see, James and Greenwood to give Rashford the rest, but we all know full well that as soon as the team sheet comes out, Rashford will be the first name on there, and we'll play Cavani. We'll play Cavani at the 9. I just interesting though. We were talking about Matic now. I wonder what money you'd get for lumping on him to be at Roma next season, because that would not surprise me in the slightest if Mourinho brings Matic over. Because I think he'd get a couple of years out in Italy. So his legs are gone, but you look at some of the players out there. But I think we'll probably will see a front three of Rashford, Cavani, and Greenwood. But yeah, I'd like to see Dan James get a bit of a run out, because I still got a bit of a soft spot for him.
Yeah, good point. And then obviously Bruno. Well, I know we said we'd like Donny to play, but ultimately, what's Ollie going to do?
Well, Bruno.
Go with Donny.
I reckon if Ollie slapped a team sheet up that said Bruno wasn't on it, he'd get a Sharpie out and write his name on it and walk out and be like, I'm playing, gaffer. And Ollie'd be like, yeah, whatever. That guy just does what he wants to do, and as long as he carries on being Bruno, I know he's struggled recently, but we know what he's got in his locker, and he is just that game changer, isn't he?
I'm dreaming of Donny, but reality is it'll be Bruno. But I'm dreaming of Donny. I would like Donny to start. I really would, but
and I'll take it Cavani up top then. So ultimately, it's his strongest 11, and there's not really any changes from what we'd expect. Ultimately, we as fans think it's tie over, but we expect Ollie to take it seriously. It's going to be interesting.
It will be tie over.
Well, hopefully within the first half, so we can make some changes at half time and see some of the some of the lads on the bench. I hope. Anyway, I just want to quickly move on to one other topic before we end the show. But quickly, I'm going to go around to each of you for your full time predictions. So, Jamie, let me come to you first.
2-0. Yeah, I rate 2-0. Bruno penalty and a Cavani goal.
Nice. Stu?
I'm going 2-1 and Cavani twice. Cavani double.
John?
I'm probably going to be the boring one amongst us. I'm going for a draw of any description. I've seen so many of these games over the years where the one team thrashes the other one in the first leg, and the second leg is a boring 0-0. I remember Porto like that in '97. So yeah, 0-0, 1-1, something like that.
Callum?
This game will be the most boring 1-0 to United you'll ever see.
And we love it, because we're going to Poland, and that's ultimately all that matters, right, lads? We'll save the chat about the Europa League final till after the game. But I just want to quickly bring up one thing. Since we've been live, Sky have put a report out and a video accompanying it. Their reporter's been out and about on the streets and has bumped in to Avram Glazer and asked him a few questions. And this is what happened. These images are courtesy of Sky News.
Do you have anything to say to Manchester United fans, Mr. Glazer? Is it time to sell the club, Mr. Glazer? Nothing to say at all. Are the fans just customers to you? Is the customer always right, Mr. Glazer? Nothing to say at all to the fans of Manchester United, Mr. Glazer. This is an opportunity for you. An apology, perhaps.
Fucking hell.
Oh, he looks like a ball sack. Fuck him.
So he literally didn't say a word when given the opportunity.
Sorry, Ben, just quickly. It reminds me of one of those episodes of like Watchdog where there's some dodgy guy has been doing some dodgy plumbing over 3 months and has been found out. And the camera's in his and the microphone. Hey, you got anything to say to those customs you've been ripping off for the last 15 years?
Yeah.
And I like the question. By the way, fair play to reporter. Are the customers always right, Mr. Glazer?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Really
she's definitely got a green and gold scarf hanging up at home, hasn't she? Like she was at the protests.
I really thought you were going to say something else then, Jamie.
Yeah, and I'd also
each
keep
of
my
you,
mouth
Jamie,
shut.
Jamie, I'll start off with you. What do you make of that, mate? Jamie, what do you make of that? Sorry, I'll come to you first.
Are we surprised? Are we surprised at anything that the Glazers do anymore? I said it, when we were talking about them a couple of weeks ago. We didn't hear a peep out of them for years and years and years. But as soon as the Buccaneers win the Super Bowl, they're all there doing press conferences and shouting about how great it is. I'd also, if my hair looked like that, I'd keep my mouth shut too. My hair's not great at the minute, so I'm wearing a hat all the time. But I think he's a scumbag. They're criminals, and they need to just finally just step away and do the right thing. The question is who buys us? Because at the minute, I genuinely think it's only someone like Elon Musk that can afford us, and I don't quite fancy being the first football team to play on the moon. I don't know about any of you lot.
That would be meant.
That would be like a great away day. That. Stu, what about? As long as it's not a blue moon, Jamie.
Well, we'll see about the Champions League final, innit? Bloody hell.
What have I said? You don't link the two on this channel. Stu, let me come over to you. What did you make of that clip?
Well, it's nothing it's everything you expect of the Glazers, isn't it? I mean, doorstepping people is probably not the best, is it? But, at the end of the day, he had a chance to address us. He had a chance to put a slight bit of the record straight. He's just hiding behind PR, I'm afraid. It's what happens. These billionaires are just hide behind PR. And with everybody and the consensus, just sell the club. The problem is he's got 4 billion quid stuffed down their pocket, 4.5 billion quid stuffed down their pocket. So, standard practice. I'm not surprised. Not surprised.
Do you know what I find quite interesting about this? And I'm tweeting it now, actually. Callum, you might be able to hit on this a bit more. I mean, I know there's been protests before, and I know question marks of the Glazers have been asked over and over again. But I cannot remember a time when the Glazers have been put under this much pressure. And what I mean by that is I can't ever remember seeing clips of random reporters in America asking the Glazers questions that relate to their actions. I've never seen that. Ultimately, the noise is working, isn't it?
I think it's working, and I think ultimately the fact that they did something that would ultimately hurt all of football has probably brought it to fruition a lot more. It was going to effectively damage the entire pyramid of English football, hence eliminating promotion and relegation, whilst giving 12 clubs, 6 from England, easy money to make these billionaires who have already become billionaires. Multi-billionaires richer, and quite frankly, it's just greed, and we haven't even allowed it to happen, but nobody's listened to us, and the actions, and we had very much a debate on Sunday about this. We seem to focus on the negatives about Sunday, and quite frankly, a camera being thrown, okay, whatever, a policeman being hurt, of course, you always condemn them kind of actions, but there was thousands. I mean, I was at that protest, Ben. There was women and children there taking 5-year-old kids. It was not a dangerous place to be.
Callum, can I just quickly pitch in, because I did speak about this ultimately, and I want to mention this as well. Ultimately, if you actually go back and watch the images, it is literally 1 or 2 people out of like 10.
Literally 1 or 2 people.
And I did mention this after that show on Sunday.
Yeah, I know you did, and I really agree with you. Sorry to interrupt, but it really irked me. It really irked me because that protest was fine. And from what I see, now I can't speak for the entire protest, but from what I've seen and videos that I've seen, that only kicked off on Sunday when police officers turned up. You see multiple videos of men being arrested and then being beaten on the ground by police officers. That I have this strong view that football has always been a working class sport and will be till the day the game dies in a billion years when the world ends. And because it's a working class sport, the upper class media will always find a way to nullify and vilify football fans, just like they did in the 80s, 90s, noughties, and this decade. It will always happen. And the problem is that protest on Sunday stopped the biggest and greatest game in the history of English football, and it made the whole that protest on Sunday was on CNN and CBS and beIN Sport. It was all over the world.
Do you know what the problem is with that though, Cal? And you're absolutely right. The problem is billionaires don't give a fuck.
Yeah, and I know they don't.
Yeah, they don't care. And that's why they're billionaires, because they don't listen to people around and they're so tunnel visioned, they don't care.
And we could see that in the video clip. Ultimately, the way he walked back to his car and sat in there. Yeah, I do agree with what you said, Callum. I think obviously you can condone a number of things, but then you also have to make light of the positivity and the message that actually went on that day. And I think ultimately, unfortunately, now if you're focusing too much on the negatives that happened or the negative that happened on that day, more or less, then you are no better than the mainstream media that are completely ignoring the message and the positive. Which ultimately is important.
Yeah. Just to add to that point again, though, Ben, it's not just football fans. You can go back to all of it. So the nurses' protest a few months ago, the Black Lives Matter protest, traditionally working class people vilified on the news, completely misjudging and not even highlighting the issue at hand. Now, I'm not comparing it to a Black Lives Matter because obviously the issues are completely different. But in turn, the inherent problem was the class and the working class issue of it, and the media getting hands on it and completely misconstruing it to ignore the issue at hand. And we saw that on Sunday.
But ultimately, with the police officers, Callum, either way, they shut themselves, and that's why they reacted like they did at the end. And that's the reason why they shut themselves, was because there was never the right security or police presence at the protest in the first place. Ultimately, when a protest like this should happen, I don't know if the responsibility is with United, if it's with the Manchester United Supporters Trust who put the protest on, or if it's with Greater Manchester Police. Someone's got questions to answer, because ultimately, when you've got 10,000 people in that vicinity, you don't just have 7 security guards or like a queue of security guards with like 10 meters in between them outside the stadium.
Do you know something with that, right? That protest was so well advertised and everybody knew about it, including the club, which is why the barriers were there. So if they were that worried, why was it full of stewards that volunteer on a weekend? If it was that much of a problem and that much of a worry, why didn't the Glazers maybe put their hands in the pockets for once and maybe pay for a little bit more security around the ground? Because the reason why they didn't do it is because they didn't give a shit about the stadium. They didn't give a shit about the fans.
Callum, I agree with your sentiment on that, but that's a cliche thing to say. Ultimately, I don't know whose responsibility that is. Ultimately, you can turn around and say that's United's responsibility to get police around the stadium. But also with protests like that of a certain size, the police also need to be informed and be there. It doesn't
ultimately lie with Man United, but the Glazers, if they were as worried as people were trying to make out and all that, they would have put their hand in the pocket.
Can I just add to that, Ben? Because I think you're absolutely right. It was match day, and it's up to Manchester United to pay for the policing of the stadium at match day. But there was nowhere near enough police there for the match, was there? And they knew there was going to be a protest. So they knew there was going to be a huge gathering of people. At 2 o'clock it was due to start, wasn't it, Cal?
But again, United don't pay for the police presence. United liaise for the police presence to stop the potential opportunity of crime taking place.
They will do on certain games, though, Ben.
They have to pay,
They will do a get on games like Liverpool and City and Leeds.
I'm not doubting they pay for a security presence as and when needed on match day. But what I'm also trying to say is obviously having security is not the same as having police presence, because ultimately a security guard doesn't have the protection or the same sections to be able to complete and disperse crowds like police officers do. So ultimately, for me, the police presence should have been better. And that's, I don't know who's responsible for that. I agree with you. If you've got more security guards there, then maybe that does act as a deterrent. But ultimately as well, in that situation, you're also dicing with the safety of your security guards and your staff and your stewards as well at that time, which is why we saw stewards opening the gate. Why the freaking hell should they, risk anything?
Oh, yeah, you're 100% right.
You don't, do you? So, I'm not trying to argue with you. What I'm trying to say is, Callum, is I actually think that if there was a better police presence there on the day and it was organised better, I truly believe that door doesn't get kicked in. So half the problems that were televised don't happen.
Agreed. Agreed.
That's my
right.
thought.
No, you're right. And you're right about the security guards. I like a bit of a rumble like anybody because I box, but there's no way I would just open the door and let you through. There's no way I'd just get in it. I'm sorry, I just wouldn't,
It's just in numbers, isn't it? You'd be silly to,
Let me quickly bring John in. John, you've been watching United for a number of years, of course, like all of us. You're nearly as old as Stu, mate, and that's not a compliment.
He's older.
What have you made of all this? And from you watching and studying United over the past 16 years, has the noise ever been this loud towards the Glazers, John?
Well, just quickly want to give a heads up to Benny, who came on the show on Sunday, but especially Callum, to get their thoughts across so clearly as they did. I was happy just to listen to those two guys who just come away from the protest a few hours before to manage to convey exactly what had went on as accurately as Callum did was very very impressive. And I think I've had a few more hours, if you like, to think about it. Sorry, Callum, I don't want to embarrass you. I did it while you were out the chair. I was hoping you wouldn't catch up. Anyway, but also
always catch up with a compliment.
But also, I've thought a bit more about what happened and stuff, and I haven't changed my opinion really much at all, other than just to add this, that, we see trouble on the streets every weekend. You go to the streets of most towns on a Friday or Saturday night, you'll see trouble. Okay. Do we say that we should close all the pubs as a result? Do we say, well, pandemic aside, do we say that we should shut down and stop serving alcohol? Of course we don't. So I don't think we should get distracted from far more important issues. And the issue on Sunday was the Glazers. Regarding that video that we just had a quick look at, did it surprise me that he didn't respond? No. I think they'll try and ride it out. As much as they can. I do disagree with one or two people that think that these protests won't do any good. I think we don't know. I could be wrong. We could have 6 months of protests and you could say to me, John, it's done nothing. And you might be right. Guessing what will happen in the future is not my forte. But I do think that they can make a difference. And we have seen protests, as I said on Sunday, we've seen protests all over the world over the hundreds of years that have brought about change, and they brought down far more significant people than the Glazers. So I see no reason why the protests at least shouldn't continue, hopefully in the peaceful manner, much as they were by 99.99% of the people on Sunday. And yeah, keep it up.
Mm-hmm. I'm completely with you. We have to keep making noise, and that's why we're here, and that's why social media platforms are there. We keep making noise. We keep sticking up for what we believe in. And yeah, I do have to 100% agree with you there, John. Stu, Callum, I know Jamie at times as well, Benny as well. The way these guys articulate their feelings is absolutely superb and miles away from anything that I can do. But also, John, you're pretty good at doing that as well, mate. As you have done in your book, even the defeats, which is out now. Guys, thank you so much.
One quick final point.
It's going to be quick, Callum, because I need to get home to bed.
Quick. You mentioned then, like there's always trouble in city centres and towns on nights out and things. We're talking about Manchester United. Like there's problems in Manchester in city centre every single day, like every single minute of every day. So we wouldn't stop all that, would we? So it's by the by.
We have to keep going. And you say there's trouble in every single town, not in Stu's, because he lives in the posh part of the world.
Not in Shropshire, not around here. No.
Not around there, they don't. And either way, even if there is, Stu's the first man on scene anyway.
I'll sort it out. Don't you worry, lads.
He's boxed, guys, as we found out tonight. He's boxed. Stu, thank you, mate.
No worries, guys.
Jamie, thank you. Callum, thank you. Thank you, everyone watching. Really appreciate you all. Stay safe, guys. Make sure you please hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Peace out.